This is the Drive-By with Freeway Frank.
Viva Frei is at my house. Viva, nice to see you.
Nice to meet you finally in person, and nice to be here.
Now, you reached out to me about 6 months ago when you were running for the PPC in your riding in NDG.
NDG Westmount.
Here in Montreal. And I remember it's not a line you use, but one of the lines from the message that you sent me was, we're on the same team. Now, in 2022, being on this team that we're on, apparently is not a very good team to be on, even though I think and view you as one of the most logical free thinkers we have here in Canada and in North America. Congratulations for all your success on YouTube. We're going to talk about all that. First of all, I want to first of all compliment you on your hair, because I think you have amazing hair, and I don't think any other podcaster has started off by saying how great hair you have.
It's the Freedom Fro. It started off as a gag. I don't remember the last time I got a haircut. I said, I'm going to grow the Freedom Fro until I'm free. And I think even if and when it happens, I'm going to keep the Freedom Fro. But it's back to my childhood. This is like full circle.
But the thing is, the Freedom Fro works, and it works for branding, and it works on your logo, right? So when people see you, they see the hair first, and they say, hey, it's Viva.
Yeah. Not on purpose at all. The avatar was just, someone said, the Freedom Fro. I asked my thumbnail guy, he did a thumbnail one day, I was like, that looks good. I used it as a default for a video when I was running up to Ottawa, and I didn't have a thumbnail. It's like, I'll just pop in the shirt avatar, and it looked so good. I was like, forget it. Cross brand, all platforms. It's now the Freedom Fro.
And from one hair guy to another, amazing. That's all I have to say. I had to get that out of the way. So how did you get the name Viva? Because I know your real name is David. Yep. How did that all come about, your nickname?
Again, totally random. So I'm a lawyer by trade.
Corporate lawyer.
Commercial litigation. Okay. So no family, no criminal, never touched that, but I studied it. I had this YouTube channel, started in 2014, I think was the first time I ever put up a video on YouTube. I was wearing a pumpkin on my head and directing traffic across the street at Halloween, but I just had a YouTube channel just by chance. Put up this squirrel stealing a GoPro video that went viral. And then
that was your GoPro video?
That was my
camera?
That was my GoPro. I put a piece of bread on it. A squirrel carried it up a tree. The video went viral. It was 2014 November. It got 5 million views in 1 week, which back then was, certifiably viral. It went on National Geographic, CBC, all over the place.
I remember that.
It was amazing. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, geez, I better, at some point, it was later on, I said, I better just give my channel a name, because I don't remember what the default name was. And that's like thinking, okay, what do I do? And I don't know why I was thinking Viva Las Vegas, or I was thinking Live Free. And then I was like, Viva Frei or die. And then my parents like, drop the die. It sounds a little cryptic. I was thinking more like the New Hampshire license plate. And then I just said, okay, Viva Frei. And it made no difference at the beginning. The channel was random nonsense. Nobody cared about the channel. And I didn't care about the name of the channel. And then as it kept on getting sort of bigger and sort of bigger, a lot of people are saying, change the name, Viva Frei. People are going to think it's Vivian. They're not going to know what the channel's about. I was like, well, forget it's gotten this far, so there's no point changing something that's working. Stubbornly stuck with it, and then it just became the brand, and it's good. Viva, live, Frei, free. My last name is Freiheit, which is verbatim freedom in German and Yiddish, depending on the crowd. Right. And it stuck, and now it's become my new name, I guess.
So are you telling me that I'm going to have to put a peanut on a GoPro camera and to get many views and subscribers?
I've done it multiple times since, and the first one got 7 million views. One of them, it was the best one ever. One of them GoPro actually bought. It got a GoPro award. But then, it tapers off. I saturated the market for squirrel stealing GoPros, but I've done other things that have gotten similarly viral, but not quite.
That launched you, right? But at the same time, it takes somebody as creative as you and as intelligent, and I'm not blowing, smoke up your ass here by saying this, but you need somebody then to keep up with those numbers. And 500,000, I don't even know, 500,000 subscribers or 530,000 followers.
Not that I'm counting. The last month has been nuts. I'm up to 524,000. But the growth was, it goes in like bumps. At first, I was just putting out for 3 or 4 years random videos. Squirrel stealing a GoPro, pulling out my kid's tooth with a squirrel using a granola bar, waxing my leg with a drone, catching a fish with a drone. It was all random stuff. Yeah. But then at some point, I just started, every now and again, I did Life in a Day of a Lawyer. And the videos, when you're doing viral videos, like one video will get 300 views, and then if it catches, it'll get hundreds of thousands or 1 million views. But when I did law videos, they all just got consistently interesting, good viewership. And everyone was saying the same thing. I like this, do more of it. We're interested in the life of a lawyer. And then I just started doing it more and more. And then eventually, I did that one video breaking down Alex Jones's deposition on YouTube. And then that video got like 250,000 views. It exposed me to the censorship on YouTube. It exposed me to the niche that I then realized this is what I'm going to do. I can't make a life waxing my legs with a drone or, having squirrels do funny things. I was like, I'm a lawyer. I have 13 years of practice at this time. I know how to make videos. I know how to edit. I'm going to do this. So just, turn the channel into focusing on law, breaking things down. And then the growth was just steady, not exponential, but quite, a steep curve. And then as certain events hit, you gain a new audience, you gain some more exposure. The impeachment exposed me to some American audience.
Would you say most of your audience is, you have a big Canadian following, but there's a lot of people that watch you because I have American friends, and I told them you were coming on here today. They're like, wait, they didn't even know you were from Montreal. It's like, is he coming? Is he flying in? No, he lives in Montreal.
I think I've got 65% American audience, about 15% Canadian. Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. And then other. Because the reality was, Canadian stuff is not typically interesting. You have every now and again interesting legal questions, the transgender issues coming out of British Columbia, some interesting laws about censorship, but by and large, the drama comes out of the States. And so I was covering stuff that I needed also to understand myself. In so doing, garnered an American audience. But this last, we'll get into this, but the Ottawa convoy, what looks like it could very well be, but hopefully not, the fall of a free and civil Canada that we've known. That's now, there's nothing else to talk about right now.
And we're definitely going to get to that. So many questions I want to ask you about all that. And I'm sure those are the things that you'd love to talk about today, and we will. But just some context, some background, again, with who you are, where you came from. So you don't practice law anymore, or you just give law advice, but you don't have law offices, or you still do?
I have a law office I call it on paper. I don't take any new mandates. I have exactly one
mandates. That word, every time I hear it,
I never liked the word mandate, even back when we were stagiaires at Borderliner Gervais. They were called mandates, and not just files, like a mandate to translate a document, a mandate to. I hated the word mandate. I've always hated it, but now I hate it doubly. So I have exactly one trial left scheduled for 2033. I have no new files, no new clients. I keep my license, despite the fact that it costs $3,000 a year. I keep it for that one file and just to have my license. But no, I don't consider myself having an active practice, and I don't take new files, and I don't give paid legal advice or any legal advice whatsoever through my channel. But it's good to keep the law license.
Knowing how politics work, and sorry for this word, I'm not saying it in a derogatory sense or in a negative way, what possessed you to want to be a politician? Because you don't strike me, you're not a politician. You're an ideas guy, and that's what I'm all about personally. I like ideas. You don't seem to associate with any particular side. However, when you ran as a PPC MP in your riding, people categorize you as right wing.
Yeah, far right, based on it. The Wikipedia amended my Wikipedia entry. Now it's just right, conservative or right. Yeah,
exactly. And you should just be labeled. First of all, no one should label anybody, but you're right wing. I'd be okay with. Every time I hear alt right, they don't know what the word means. I don't know what the word means. What does it mean exactly? I know what it means, but I don't think, having heard your ideas, having heard what you're about, what you cover, how unbiased you are, how balanced you are, there's nothing alt-right about you. But tell us, with the PPC and running, for the People's Party of Canada, that must have changed the way some people, maybe colleagues, friends, family, other people viewed you now, because you were starting to associate yourself with somebody named Mad Max, even though I don't think there's anything mad about Maxime Bernier. How was that for you? First of all, going in as somebody who was going to go into this political realm, and we know how it works, nothing changes, and then associating you with maybe a party that is a decent party and is about the people, but a lot of people associate with this alt-right fringe minority.
I know what I thought of the party back from what I understood of it based on the media in 2018. I'm not immune from fake news when you don't know that it's fake news.
Right.
But even backing it up earlier, like my initial law stuff on YouTube, I tried to remain not just objective, because I still think I'm objective. I tried to remain neutral in my analyses. I'd say, okay, fine, here's the law, here's both sides, yada, yada, yada. You got to make sure that it's still recording. We have to share the neuroses. So I was in my exposés. I was still being not just objective, but neutral. So when I did the breakdown of Bill C-16, Jordan Peterson's fear that it would result in compelled speech, I was like, okay, he makes some good points, but you don't draw conclusions from outlier cases, whatever. Then I just noticed the more I delved into it, you can't not share your own opinion because it becomes not disloyal to your viewers, but at some point you have an opinion strong enough that you want to share it, and at another point people expect you to tell them it's not, you can be objective, but now let me know what you think, because otherwise it's tough to assess your objectivity if you don't tell us what you actually think, so we can assess your analysis based on your own opinion. The running for office was out of pure necessity. I don't consider myself a politician. I think I'm not too pure. I'm not cutthroat enough to be a politician.
Yeah, you're too good.
I can't do it.
Too nice.
I don't like seeing people. I don't like people suffering. I don't like playing the game of politics to crush people for political victories. Can't do it. But
you mean what Trudeau's doing?
What Trudeau? But
we'll get to that.
What all of them are doing? It's all.
They all do it. Yeah.
And Maxime plays the game, but he's got thicker skin than most. I don't think I could put up with the slander. Like, it won't remind me about the slander.
Yeah.
So it was only out of necessity after this COVID business happens, and I'm seeing, I want to say desecration, but it might be more defecation on our Constitution. Like they literally just pooped on our constitutional rights. And I was like, I have the good mind to leave this country, but I have a channel, I have a loyalty. And I said, jokingly, but not so jokingly, I'm going to run for the country before I run from the country, because everyone can up and leave. And if I had no kids, I probably would have up and left a long time ago. I've got
what are you
kids.
saying? I have no kids.
Well,
get the hell out.
You can come to your own conclusions. I would have been out. I think I would have been out a long time ago if I had no kids. But you can't just up and leave when you have 3 kids and they're young and impressionable. And I would have felt like a traitor. And so I said, I remember sitting in the car one day, and I said, and I was on the verge of tears. I said, I don't want to do it, but there's absolutely no choice. If I leave now, I'm going to feel like a coward, and people will rightly call me a coward. I'm going to run. I'm going to make what impact I can. And then if this is the Canada that Canadians want, maybe I'm leaving Canada, but I think Canada might have left me. And I ran. Now, the impression that you get with people, I ran not just saying I'm going to jump in the PPC. I had met Max, it was probably a year before I made the decision, or close to. And I remember what I thought of Maxime and the PPC in 2018, because you heard the CBC coming out and saying it's a racist, xenophobic party, anti-Muslim, anti-immigration. Yeah. There was that Nova Scotia candidate who put out a tweet that said Islam is evil, and then they used that to brand the entire PPC. I remember thinking these things, and it stuck with me. Then I remember learning that a lot of these Facebook messages that were allegedly racist were actually planted Facebook messages done by some, I don't know what they call them, it was basically a conspiracy to literally put Facebook messages that were racist about the PPC, then mandate some HR company to find the posts so that they can then run a story saying, look at these racist PPC posts on Facebook. And it's like, holy crap, I didn't know any of this. I didn't know about the lawsuit for defamation that Maxime filed against Kinsella, I think his name is. And then I met Maxime. I was like, and I knew what I thought of Maxime. There's the rumors or the story that he left a top secret file that his girlfriend, who used to be part of some mob, had found. I was like, oh, I know what I think as first impression. Then I had him on and I asked him all the questions, and his answers satisfied me. And I think they satisfied a lot of viewers. And then when I just see the Conservative Party, the Liberal Party, the NDP basically saying, yeah, a free Canada is one in which we can lock you in your homes, make your kids wear masks, shut down your businesses. I was like, that's not a free Canada. And the only party sticking up for basic constitutional rights was the PPC, the only party. I said, well, that's it. I have. This is the way I feel right now. This is the way the world is going. This is where it's pushing me into this battle. I have no choice. If I ever do leave the country, I will be able to say that I fought a good battle in this election, and I ran, got 1,500 votes in Westmount. It went 53% to Mark Garneau and the Liberals. I was like, okay, well, I've learned my lesson, but at least you've heard what I had to say. And I think it had an impact nationally, even if it didn't locally. But now I know that whatever I decide to do in the future, I did what I promised I would do, and I fought, and I'm continuing to fight, and I will continue to fight. But at some point, if the people don't want anything different, they'll get what they want, and I'll make my own decisions as to where I go.
Why do you think... he lost his seat. Maxime lost his seat in Beauce, I believe.
Well, yeah, he didn't lose it. He just didn't win in his own.
He didn't win in his own riding. Exactly. For a party that did get more votes in the last election, so it did grow, right? It's up to 6%.
Yep.
You see it growing in the future?
100, absolutely.
Especially after this and everything.
After this, I can't wait for there to be another election, but absolutely. There'll be a 10% easily. And when Maxime gets invited to the debates, when he gets allowed to speak,
to actually show up.
Yeah, and people can hear him. They might change that. They might not change their mind much.
Because official party status is 5%, right? So
yeah, I think it was 4.5 or 5, and he was not invited to the federal debate as a matter of policy. Then they excluded him on the polling criteria.
Yeah.
But now that they've reached, I think it was 4.5 or 5% nationally, I think automatically he's going to be invited to the next leaders debate. So it'll change. But why? You're going to say, like, why didn't he win in his own riding?
Well, the thing to me here's the thing. As somebody who, I'm not going to lie, I voted conservative. I liked Maxime a lot, and I liked what the PPC stood for, but I was afraid that those votes
were going to split.
We're going to split.
I heard the argument, yeah.
So you've heard that before. When you hear somebody like me tell you that, what do you tell somebody that says you shouldn't be afraid because you were never going to get to that point where this party either gets official status, which it did, keeps growing if people think this way? Because I think there's a lot of flaws in the Conservative Party as well. I'm glad Aaron O'Toole is no longer the leader, but now I'm hoping that Pierre Poilievre will not be another Aaron or an Andrew Scheer. I'm hoping that he stands out and does the things he says he's going to do. But these are all, in my opinion, career politicians that once they get in, get blocked.
I don't have my politics ruins everything shirt on, but yes, politics ruins everything. It ruins politicians. Everything. Well, look, I don't blame anyone for voting Conservative because it's still at least not a vote for the Liberals. The vote splitting argument, I had two arguments for. One was spiritually, you never split your vote if you vote with your entire integrity. So you can always have that fear. But then the flip side is like people voting NDP don't say, do I vote NDP because I might be splitting the Liberal vote? At some point, you vote with your conscience. You can vote strategically if you want. But I don't think it was ever going to split the vote because I think the Conservatives went more liberal to try to split the Liberal vote, not
which was wrong.
Which was they might have gotten a few, but O'Toole was a useless, not beyond useless. He was at least Trudeau is divisive. You know that he is.
What you see is what you get.
You know that he's the snake in the grass, and he's not hiding it. O'Toole was a turncoat, and he would say one thing one day, literally, and say another thing the other.
Like Doug Ford.
Doug Ford. I'm not familiar with as familiar with his sound bites. And Trudeau.
Yeah.
You don't get surprised when he says one thing one day, one thing that, because he's a liar. Like, we're not a country that makes vaccination mandatory. I believe that vaccination should be mandatory. We know that Trudeau's a liar. But O'Toole, we had faith in. And then he quickly turned, it was a turncoat, dropped all of the main issues that were at play, and was as liberal as the Liberals. So, anyhow, I won't blame you for voting Conservative. I never asked, because I didn't even ask my parents if they voted for me. But it's not my business. You vote
Chances are, maybe not.
It wouldn't have made a difference.
It doesn't matter.
But
I really wanted to get, and people like me wanted to get Trudeau up.
Yeah, and I talked to people in my own, when I went
But
door
you're right
to door,
about everything you said.
Well, the vote splitting, I think, is a bad argument, but whatever. People are going to do what they want to do regardless. But I went door to door in my neighborhood. Everyone hated Trudeau. Everyone who knew anything hated Trudeau. And they said, well, who do I vote for? I said, if you want to vote for Trudeau 2.0, vote NDP. They're effectively the same. The only difference between Jagmeet and Trudeau is that Jagmeet has never had power to be so corrupted. But they're just as much divisive liars. They're just as much. They say awful things about Canadians. They purport to be unifiers, and then they refer to right-wing people they refer to people who don't want to wear masks as right-wing, selfish, don't care about community. And then 3 days later, Jagmeet Singh gets caught not wearing a mask, breaking the rules. I guess that makes him exactly what he accused others of being. They're divisive liars. And I said, so if you want to protest vote, you obviously vote PPC and not NDP. But it doesn't matter. They voted NDP, and the NDP picked up some seats. Liberals stayed basically the same, and Westmount 53% because people just don't care.
And for American or viewers in other parts of Canada, Westmount is the most affluent and English district or borough in Montreal.
Yeah, I think Westmount has the highest GDP of any municipality in Canada. If I'm not mistaken, there might be Thornhill in Toronto, which might be
British properties, and if in Vancouver, and I think Bridle Path and Thornhill, Ontario.
So that's Westmount. NDG is more working class still, but and NDG votes more NDP because of that. But they're all voting on just their idealistic misapprehensions or misunderstandings of what the parties represent. But all that to say, I ran. I got to fight with Garneau. I got to unleash my uncensored side on Twitter, and I got to make my arguments. And some people heard. Most people don't listen because they're too busy with their lives. They haven't been impacted enough, or they've actually been benefited by all of this, or they don't care, or they're subsidized by the government. But the people who are listening, I think we spread the word, and it'll be more growth for the next time around. I'm just not sure that I will be running a second time. I had this, when I was so stupid, I thought I might actually win the night before the election. I was like, if I win, I'm going to be another cog in this awful machine of this government. I won't be able to do what I love, which is make videos, do commentary. I won't be able to be productive. I'm just going to be another useless cog.
Politician.
And I was like, then I didn't even come close to winning. So I'm not even sure that I would want to have won, but I thought I could have at a point in time. I'm more realistic now, but I said my piece. I think we've done a good job at what I've called normalize the PPC, because they were really maligned by the media. I think people understand now. If you've got a Jewish boy from Westmount running with the PPC, maybe it's not that intolerant of a party. If you have the party, you think, but then people still call Ben Shapiro, a right winger. Yeah. And when you have a party standing up literally for minority rights, contrary to the oppression of minorities that you see out of the Liberals, maybe their minds will be changed. But the media really is a powerful government tool to promote false narratives.
And we'll get to that because I know, as somebody who worked in legacy media now for 30 years, I have a lot to say. People have heard me talk. I want you to talk about it coming up. You've been calling out the BS for 2 years. We're catching up on 2 years of COVID, where we've never met before. Now we're sitting down together. There's a lot I want to ask you about that. And you've been on the side of real science and facts. You fact check yourself constantly. Everything I've heard you talk about, anything I've heard you state on your lives or on YouTube is backed up. As a lawyer, from a legal standpoint, as somebody who's a commentator or personality or influencer, whatever I hate that word, whatever you want to call yourself, hate that word, social media personality, maybe. What do you think of people that are, because there's a lot of them, still stuck in March of 2020? We've been through 2 years. I've seen your videos where you're wearing your mask, where you're wearing that mask. It's basically a mask that has your beard and your face at the bottom, but you're wearing a mask. And the minute you walk into a business, people freak out, but you push the envelope. You try to expose these businesses for who they really are. The people who are working there, it's not their fault. They're trying to earn a paycheck. But what you try to do is question people and ask them, do you really believe what's going on? No comment, no comment. They never want to comment. You've done a lot in the last 2 years. Basically, after 2 years of this, people that are still stuck, what do you say to people that are still challenging you on what you're saying 2 years after the fact and still think the way they're thinking like it's March 2020?
And full disclosure, I'm whether or not it's clinically neurotic, I'm a sufficiently neurotic person. March of 2020, I was crazy as well.
Me too.
I was like, kids
wiping down everything.
My daughter got a book given to her from a friend. I mean, I'm not proud to admit it. I'm just not ashamed to admit it. My daughter got a book given to her from a friend. It's like, leave it outside for 2 days. I don't want to take any chances. Groceries came in. We're washing down each apple. We're putting stuff in. We
did the same thing.
So, but that lasted about a month, and then I started thinking like, okay. And I'd say like, if this is as deadly as they're saying it is, it would all be over pretty much by now. It would not be. We wouldn't be where we are. We wouldn't have the luxury of saying, okay, well, another 2 weeks to see where it goes. It would have been disastrous. But in terms of not being, I'm pretty shy or pretty reluctant to take any medical scientific positions or even discuss it because I don't want to be wrong. I don't want anyone saying Viva said this and now I went out and licked a lamppost and got COVID or whatever. But so when I say something, it's on the one hand with the caveat that it might very well be wrong, but by and large, this seems to be where things are at now. Having lived through it, where you don't need to be a scientist to know that locking up outdoor dog runs to prevent the transmission of COVID is absolutely idiotic. Insane. And it's insane. There's no other, it's madness. But the reality is like, I still have these arguments with people, won't call them out publicly, who accuse me of misinformation. I just say, just give me one thing that I've ever said that was a factual statement that turned out to be wrong. Predictions, forget that. Those are fun. We do those for fun. But one thing that is misinformation. And the people, they can't find one thing. Maybe one tweet about a Pennsylvania decision over the election that we disagreed on why the decision was ultimately dismissed. Whatever. But I try to remain pretty on what is, at the point, relatively incontrovertible fact. And then I'm still reluctant to do it. But how do you talk to people who still think masks make sense? And I was like, they're going to call me an anti-masker now. And one thing I've said is, if you don't have COVID, wearing a mask does absolutely nothing. The risk of asymptomatic transmission, we've always known, has been absolutely infinitesimal if it's not the way pandemics propagate through asymptomatic transmission. And we know now that that's not the case with COVID. But you have people who are just too firmly embedded in their beliefs that if they were to admit now that they were wrong, not duped, even just wrong, their ego would take a hit, as if to say, I must have been stupid to have believed something that's wrong, so it's easier for me to continue believing that which is wrong, as opposed to saying, my goodness, maybe I overreacted and maybe I was the one who was actually panicked and not you. I've had people tell me, David, you're in a state of panic, you're not thinking straight. I was like, this is what we call confession through projection. It's like, you don't realize you're the one now talking about vaccinating your children for a virus which we know has statistically, I would say, minimal or non-existent risks for a child. And therefore, even if you think what you're doing is not risky, it's not producing any positive benefit. So you are basically saying, I believe in useless medical procedures for something which poses no risk, or I believe in doing it to prevent the risk to adults, which we now know is also not the case, because vaccinating your kid is not going to protect granny anyhow. But the problem is that people get too much ego involved when they were so firmly convinced about something, and then they realize, holy cows, I might have just done something irreparable to my children, or I might have been doing something irreparable to my children for the last 2 years, like making them wear masks 8 hours a day, and they can't admit it. And they can't admit that maybe they were the ones sacrificing their own well-being and their children's own well-being for what they were told was the well-being of others, when it was actually not necessary. So at some point you can't reach them until they want to reach themselves.
Something I mentioned on my last podcast is, don't people feel dirty that they were able to just drop everything in the last week and a half? Doug Ford changed his tune, let go, backpedaled like it was nothing.
Not like nothing.
Like nothing. I would be very angry. As a matter of fact, I am angry for a lot of the people who have, complied and done what they did. And I don't judge them for doing what they did. I believe we live in a free society and we have freedom of choice. You would think still, not for too long. As this is happening, they're debating something in Parliament.
T-minus 4 hours to see if Canada survives the day.
Right, which we'll talk about that coming up. But so I can't believe that people who speak like we do, who I really and genuinely believe speaking with pure rationale, are immediately labeled as misinformation, or we are, you go to Ottawa for the truck convoy, you're a racist, you're a white nationalist, you're automatically put in that category. Okay, Viva tweeted something about the, Pennsylvania, state of Pennsylvania in the election. He made that mistake once, says something about COVID. We're going to hold him.
It wasn't a mistake.
It wasn't a mistake. But my point is, they don't let anything go, right? And they're the first people, these progressives, right? They're the first people to forget everything they've done wrong. Like wearing blackface 3 times. Everything they've done gets swept to the side. Everything somebody like yourself does is reminded, well, you said this. They call you out on every single thing you did, where you're the first person to admit that you're a human, you make mistakes, you try to fact check. But why do you think it's so easy for them to bunch everybody up in the same category, throw them in the corner, and just not give them the voice? Because the media does not give us...
The short answer, it's confession through projection.
Right.
And when Justin Trudeau comes out and calls people racist, it's because he knows deep down... He doesn't believe it. He doesn't regard himself as racist, but he knows deep down when he sees a person, the first thing he sees is race. And that, in my mind, is the definition of racism. You might see it for good or for bad. Like, oh, there's a person of another race, I have to treat them X, Y, and Z, either better or worse. Good racism is still racism. It's differential treatment based on racial identity. Trudeau, when he looks at anybody, white, black, gay, straight, Muslim, Christian, he looks for all them. That's all he sees them for. So he just assumes everyone else looks at people and sees them the same way. So when he comes out and says, you're racist, this guy only sees race. You're misogynist, this guy only has disdain in both perspective and treatment of women, historical and present. So it's confession through projection with the accusations. The failure to forgive, or the refusal to forgive, is just tribal politics. You'll forgive your allies, you will never forgive your enemies. And it's the tribalistic treatment of crush your enemies and do whatever you can to support your allies until your allies are no longer your allies, then destroy them. But Oh, I had a thought. I forget what it was now. It was the freedom to choose. Well, you get called these names. Where if I say, I don't, masks, I'll do it because it's the law. I'll do it because I'm not going to fight with everybody in a store.
Correct.
But I think it's idiotic.
Absolutely.
And then you get called an anti-masker. And then you put out a tweet. I put out a tweet, it was a while back, where I said, hey, did we all forget about that time when there were toxic face masks or potentially toxic face masks that were required to be worn by teachers in daycares and daycare kids, and people don't know about it? So they call you, they say fake news. That never happened. I was like, here's the CBC article. Potentially toxic face masks worn by tens of thousands of teachers and kids in Quebec recalled because they had graphene particles in them that they were kids and the teachers were breathing in, to the point where they said it felt like they had cat hair in the back of their throat. And I want to tell one more anecdote about this person. And then a daycare professional that I know personally, I never heard the story, but this person comes up to me sobbing on my shoulder because they had been wearing that mask that was recalled for 4 months and they were nervous about what's going to happen to their body long term. Ironically enough, that person later on apparently cannot stand my views on the trucker convoy because, hey, look, apparently we've forgotten about when the government made a mistake by mandating potentially toxic face masks for daycare teachers and kids. Now they're infallible when it comes to mandating vaccination for vaccine passports for a demographic that is at a virtually 0% risk of any serious side effect, whereas the inverse is not at all true about the procedure intervention itself. But it's like it's double standards. People are viewing the world by and large through tribal politics blinders, where if someone you like says something you don't like, you'll find a way to forgive them. And if someone you ideologically are not aligned with says something you don't like, you will never let them forgive. You'll never let them forget it. You'll never forgive them for it, and you will always view everything they do in the worst possible light. Yeah. And I think you have Trudeau, the leader of a country, doing nothing but everything to promote that perspective among Canadians, by Canadians to Canadians.
And he's Mr. Tokenism himself. Everywhere he goes, everything he does, there's a reason behind it. I'm not saying you can't go to a gay pride parade, but does he need to go to 27 gay pride parades? No. Does he have to wear the clothes of the country he's visiting? Does he have to? No, honestly, to me, there's no bigger faker in world politics. I mean, this guy is just playing the game. And it's almost like people are just buying into, I don't even think he's good looking. I always say it, but the point is,
he makes me ill to look at and to listen to. I mean, and that's because I loathe everything about him personally and politically. But you say tokenism. He, what do you say? Why is half your cabinet women? And he says, because it's 2020. I was like, oh, great. So you want the credit for hiring the women on the basis your equal rights. Yeah. But then you don't want the condemnation when you fire the woman because she won't adhere to your corrupt demands. Exactly. And for anybody who doesn't know this, he took credit for appointing the first Aboriginal Minister of Justice Attorney General, Jody Wilson-Raybould. Right. It's called MOJAG for the acronym. He took credit for hiring the first female Aboriginal, appointing her. It was a great day for Aboriginal rights. And then doesn't expect to get dumped on when he demotes her because she refuses to adhere to his unethical intervention to pressure her not to prosecute SNC-Lavalin, his buddies. And when she, as an independent Minister of Justice, says, no, I'm going to prosecute them for corruption and fraud, he then shuffles her out of office. So he wants all of the goodies that come along with the tokenism for the purposes of appointment, but none of the blasting that comes with actually firing your first female Aboriginal MOJAG because she would not adhere to your corrupt demands. I mean, it's the height, it's the Mount Everest of hypocrisy.
And as you said, the Mount Everest of hypocrisy, if we go through every 1,000 feet leading up to the tip of Mount Everest, what this guy has done, I just find it unbelievable, Viva, that people would vote for this guy again. And I said that in the last election. There's barely hanging on to a minority.
They don't know what he's done. It drives me nuts.
How could they not know what he's done?
The Aga Khan ethics violation. Yeah. So that was Aga Khan is a philanthropist who has something called the Aga Khan Foundation. They were petitioning the federal government for $50-60 million. This is 2016. Justin Trudeau gets undeclared gifts, all-inclusive paid vacation holiday to Aga Khan's private island. He brings out the RCMP on jet skis for security. He doesn't disclose this gift while the Aga Khan is petitioning, lobbying the federal government for tens of millions of dollars that he gets busted, gets actual condemnation. He gets convicted. What's the word? He is found to have breached his ethics. That was his first ethics violation.
Ethical.
Then he's got a second one.
He's had 3 of them.
He's had 3 accusations, 2 convictions.
2 convictions.
The second one was the SNC-Lavalin, where he unlawfully interfered with the Minister of Justice's judicial independence to prosecute, exercised undue pressure to pressure her.
We Charity.
We Charity was investigated because his wife was receiving gifts from the We Charity. His mother and brother were on the payroll speaking fees, $335,000 in speaking fees over 2 years, while history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. While the We Charity was granted a sole-sourced, no-bid government contract to manage $1 billion in student loans for the hefty management fee of $20 million. And I don't know how the Mario Dion, the commissioner, the ethics guy, let him off the third time. Don't know how. And then then the groping of the reporter back in 2000, which he apologized for, the blackface. If it were Trump, he would have been in jail on the first one, and I mean, and I might have even said you deserve to be in jail for that. Taking gifts from someone who's petitioning the government for tens of millions, that's called corruption. Period. I would have. The ethics code, I forget what the law is called. It doesn't provide for any meaningful sanctions other than small fines, and it's a political tool, not a criminal one. But my goodness, if this were Trump, if this were any conservative, they would have gone full throttle. But when you pay the media and when you own the media, they've got a very short memory, and when it comes to, stories like potentially toxic face masks that the government was mandating for kids and teachers, they have a way of reporting on it and then burying it in the search results.
He bailed out the media at a tune of $600 million. I think he sent over 150 different media sources.
$600 million to under 200, 175, right. I think.
Then you wonder why the media has only one view, right? You never watch legacy media at any point. I've never seen anybody where they show the other side of the story, or they silence anybody who has an opinion, or else people like you would end up on. When's the last time you've done an interview on legacy media?
I can tell you, I remember two.
Okay. Prior to COVID.
One was W5. Oh, prior to COVID. When I ran for office.
Okay.
I had to beg the CBC.
Right.
Have me on. I have to beg CJAD. Those bastards. I have nothing but disdain.
I can't listen to
I have nothing but disdain for them.
And I worked in that building, and I can't listen to them anymore.
I think I put them on blast enough that they've blocked me on Twitter. Elias Makos blocked me on Twitter. Their weekly columnist, commentator from the Gazette blocked me.
James Benny?
Yes. It's just toxic hatred. But
James, freedom is overrated, many. That's the line he said.
Oh, he's sitting there saying that when it comes to this protest, it's only going to be broken up when you get cops with shields and batons and guns on their hip.
Fantastic.
Nice police state, you so-called liberal.
Yeah. But defund the police.
Don't ask for consistency among these people. No, when I was running for office for the PPC, they were sitting there dumping on Maxime Bernier, and I would call in every day. I'm surprised they didn't block my number. I would call in. It's like, you guys, if you want to poop on him, have him on, have me on. I'm able to defend the positions of the party. No, they're not interested. And even when they had Maxime Bernier on, it was a pre-recorded interview. And what did they do? They poisoned the well before they aired the broadcast to say he's an extremist, anti-vaxxer. Yeah, they tainted their audience because of the luxury they had of having done the interview. They know how to set it up. But I did a CBC interview with Martin. You going to help me with this?
CBC Montreal?
Yeah, CBC Daybreak.
Daybreak.
Oh, we're not live, so I can't ask the chat to get the audience.
And we don't have somebody on the other side of the glass.
It'll come in a second. But I did an interview. They finally gave me an interview because Maxime was not available the week before the election. So the election is on Monday. They gave me an interview on the Wednesday. It was live on Daybreak, but nobody.
Carpentier?
No. I think the last name is Martin.
Oh, the last name is Martin.
Yeah, or first name is Martin. Oh, goodness. The CBC Daybreak host. You look it up and
okay.
And
I'm
going to get it. I'm going to get it. See who gets it first. They gave me an interview on the Wednesday. I know that it was a good interview. I might have been a little irritated, but
Finnerty?
No.
Finnerty? No. Mike Finnerty? No.
You'll get it. So I do the interview on Wednesday. Then it airs on the Thursday, and I know that it was good. People called me up and they said, good interview. My dad thinks I might have been a little too aggressive, but my dad's very sensitive when it comes to me looking aggressive. But then I said, hey guys, when are you going to put it on your website? Because I don't know how many people are listening to CBC Daybreak at 7:10 in the morning. And like, oh, we're busy. We'll get it up soon. It's like, if you guys had to earn your ad dollars, you would put up an interview that people are interested in seeing because it would drive traffic to your website. But when you're sucking at the government teats and you don't actually need to earn your ad dollars, you can just go to the government for your $1 billion a year. No incentive. Mm-hmm. I had to hound them all week. They posted my interview, which was recorded on the Wednesday, aired on the Thursday. They finally put it on their website. They updated their website Sunday afternoon before the election. And then I have to go blast it around myself so that people can hear me. So that's when Legacy Media gave me the interview and did everything they could. Had I not harassed them, they would have never put it on their website to begin with, and whoever was fortunate enough to be listening at 7:10 in the morning would have heard it.
To me, the way they've, I don't even listen anymore because I can't. I tune them in, or last time was maybe a couple of weeks ago. They're kind of changing their tune now because people are turning against them. But the way it's inexcusable, the way they dehumanized and stigmatized the unvaccinated, threw them all in the same category. Anti-maskers. If you're unvaccinated, you're an anti-masker, and you're anti-vax. No, you're not. Which, of course, makes people, come out and immediately defend that, right? You don't have to justify anything as a person. If you don't want to get the vaccine, you don't get the vaccine. Point final. But what they've done, especially on media and local media here in Montreal, to me is shocking that some of those people continue to. And I understand people are, because I collected a paycheck in Legacy Media for 30 years. But I always say I wouldn't have made it through COVID because I would have said, there's no way I can't talk about this. And I would have been fired shortly after I got fired for other reasons, which is no reason. You get what I'm saying? It's just, it's unbelievable to me that they just did that to people. Because if they did that for any other group, can you imagine any other minority, any other group? Forget it. They would have been. But
what they don't understand is they are doing it to those groups. I mean, for CJAD is the most toxic, vitriolic crap out there. It's shocking. And when they go out there and they say, and they demonize the unvaxxed, and they demonize people who are vaccine hesitant, and they demonize, as they're all right-wing nutcases, anti-science, anti-vaxxers, even those who happen to have gotten double vaccinated, that still respect a thing called individual choice.
Right.
But they're so toxic in their message that what they actually do, they bring out hatred in other people who now say, well, if I hear it on the radio, that my hatred now, I can put my hatred into action. I can put my hatred into thought, into belief, into direction at these people. Because if I hear the dudes on the CJAD doing it, it's mainstream enough. And it's what, when I do my weekly live streams with Robert Barnes, we talk about this. He called it the political permission slip. It's these people now feel that they have political permission given by these people who work for the media to be vitriolic and intolerant towards these people because it's mainstream. But I've been saying it from the beginning though. When Justin Trudeau comes out and says these people are putting us all at risk, he doesn't understand who he's talking about, or he does and he doesn't care. And I think it's probably the latter. Black population, Latino population, Indigenous population are statistically more likely to be vaccine hesitant. Why? Because the government has tested on them historically with the Tuskegee experiments that lasted for 40 years and most people don't know a damn thing about.
Yep.
The residential schooling system that Trudeau just came out and apologized for, that Mark Miller, his wonderful sidekick, touts the biggest settlement in the history of Canada. They were doing medical experimentation and testing on these kids in the schools, not treating them for certain illnesses, testing certain things on them to see how they responded. These are the same people now, after they apologize for previous government atrocities and after they compensate for them, say, trust us now. Now we know what's better for you. Now, when we tell you that if you don't do this, you're selfish, you're putting us all at risk, now we're telling you the truth. Trust us now. And they know damn well what they're doing. When you have a vaccine passport system for a Canadian Tire, you may as well be saying we are specifically and statistically excluding blacks, Latinos, and indigenous. And when I went to do my Viva on the street, I saw that
video, yeah.
I mean, I don't like pointing the camera at people, but if anyone was not observant, astute, they would have noticed who exactly was standing right behind me in line because they apparently could not get into the Canadian Tire. So it's just disgusting. They know what they're doing. They try to cloak it's their own selfishness and it's their own fear. And Natasha Hall on CJAD says, I feel better going to a restaurant knowing that everyone around me is vaccinated, even though you can still contract and transmit the virus. But yeah, in your own irrational head, you feel better and you're accusing others of being selfish and unscientific. It's confession through projection through and through. And they try to cloak their own selfishness and their own fear by accusing others of being the same. I have no fear.
Me too.
I had an interaction. I don't want to say anything that can identify the individual. I get a text saying, so we'll see you then. Don't worry. We're all double vaxxed. I was like, don't take it personally. I don't give a shit. I wouldn't have asked, and I don't care.
Yeah.
And don't expect me to tell you. You may know. Don't expect me to offer, hey, we're not brothers in this. Like, it's not because you tell me something I don't care about that I'm going to tell you something that I don't think you're entitled to know. But it's pure selfishness, and above and beyond, it's like it's become virtue signaling. Like people changing their avatars on social media, putting emojis of syringes to show that they're vaccinated. It's deranged. It's deranged, and it's a cult-like behavior. But after 2 years of social isolation, being pulled away from your friends and family, being told what you can read, psychological torment, I mean, that's how you get people to be so vulnerable that they will say, just, give me whatever it is that you say I need to get in order to be free, and I'll do it. And that's how it works. It took 2 years to reshape society.
And their cult leader is, their David Koresh is Justin Trudeau.
Those people are putting us all at risk.
Right.
I hear his awful, disgusting voice in my head whenever he sees it. For anybody who doesn't know, during the election, he sat on the podium and he said, those people who don't get their kids, they're putting their own kids at risk, and they're putting all our kids at risk. Those people are putting us all at risk. And now this is the same Jackanini who's coming around talking about unity now. It's time to heal.
It's Trump derangement syndrome, because somehow, this guy hasn't been in power in the last year. Somehow his name always comes up, right? The Trump 2024 flag appears at the Ottawa convoy. The Nazi flag, the Confederate flag, which I was there for 15 straight hours. I started to read some of the tweets. I was looking for them. Yep. I didn't see them. Okay?
I went looking for it too. Didn't see it.
And I'm not saying that they weren't there. Okay. And were they planted? Was some Yahoo raising a Nazi flag? It's possible. But what is with their focus to just, it's an obsession to just show that and forget about the rest of the story. There's more to the story than one idiot holding up a Confederate flag and walking down,
Well, but and it's, first of all, the one idiot who had the Confederate flag, fresh pressed, brand new Confederate flag, which is very funny to have in the first place. Also funnier to have it at a Canadian protest and not
freshly pressed.
Freshly pressed. Happened to be the only dude with a full ski mask on, and not just a ski mask where all their holes were eyes and a mouth. He had sunglasses over his eyes.
I saw that.
Quite weird. And so whether or not it's a plant, it doesn't matter. It gets weaponized by these lying politicians, and then they use that one image, which they can give it its own momentum. They can give it its own gravity on social media by retweeting. So it takes on a life of its own. They retweeted that one image, the Nazi flag, which is also very interesting. One individual on the fringe side of the protest who happened to have a photographer 3 feet from his face with easily a $3,000 rig. For anybody who knows cameras, it looked to be a 7200 Canon zoom lens, which is $2,000 on a good Canon body. So a $3,000 rig on a photographer who happens to be 3 feet from the one guy.
Questionable.
One questionable guy. Yeah. The whole thing. So, but then they get it. And so by accident, was it a Yahoo? Was it a plant? What is it? Someone who genuinely is a Nazi. They take that one image, and then they try to brand everyone else along that image, and they use their media who runs that image, runs the story, and then you get Jagmeet Singh talking about Nazis and Confederate flags, Justin Trudeau,
and linking it to conservatives.
Just linking it to the protest.
Right.
And you were there for 15 hours. I was there, I think it's 12 or 13 days. And
wow.
I was looking for it because I would have discussed with them. I would have asked them what they're doing here. Yeah. I interviewed indigenous protesters, Big Bull for one, Big Bear for another. I interviewed a trans individual on the side of the protesters who said that their only source of aggression and violence came from the counter-protesters when the counter-protesters saw that an individual with a trans flag was crossing over from their side to the other side. They didn't like that. No. Physical pushing and name-calling. Yep. Interviewed a Haitian immigrant, a Kuwaiti truck driver, a lot of people from Eastern Europe.
Romanian truck drivers?
Romanian. There were a lot of Romanians, a lot of Poles, and a couple of Russians. But no, it's the way fake news operates. It's like Nancy Pelosi's wrap-up smear. If anybody doesn't get that reference, look up Nancy Pelosi's wrap-up smear. It tells you how the FBI does it. It tells you how intelligence creates fake news by basically self-referential. They say, this is true because we found an article in Yahoo News, but that article was us leaking to Yahoo News so that we could then reference it. Wrap-up smear. Same thing with this fake news. You get one image. Mainstream media runs with it incessantly. The urine on the monument defacing Terry Fox never happened.
We were there, and I mentioned this on a prior podcast. I was there with my mother-in-law, mid-60s. Okay, this woman drove 7.5 hours from Fort Erie, Ontario, to be there because, as a true Canadian and a patriot, my mother-in-law Susan, she wanted to be there to be there with the truckers. She sympathized with what was going on. She wanted to be heard. She wanted to hold up her Canadian flag loud and proud. So we were there. We were at the tomb of the unknown soldier. They don't tell you that truckers, once they heard something was going on there, they surrounded the tomb and wouldn't let anybody walk by. Hours later, they put flowers at the tomb. They had it protected. Same thing with Terry Fox. I never saw a Confederate or a Nazi flag on it. I saw an upside-down flag, a Canadian hat, Canada hat, and I believe he had something else.
No, there were a lot of F Trudeau.
Oh, F Trudeau. F Trudeau.
What's that? The maple leaf. F Maple Leaf CK Trudeau.
Had that.
Hey,
now,
you don't like that? I can understand that.
Yeah. Now, I turned to my wife and I said, I don't like that. And an upside-down flag, the meaning of Canada being in disarray or being at odds with what's happening in your country. You never like to see your flag upside down. But at the same time, I get it. I understand why people, and you have the freedom of choice to fly that flag upside down. Never was it defaced. I didn't see what they saw, what they said. To me, it's crazy because when you get home 15 hours later, in your case, 13 days later, and you're seeing all this, you're trying to pinpoint what geographical area it was in, and you say, did you see that? And my friend who spent just as much time, he's a photographer who works on the show, Jared, as you, he spent in Ottawa. He was documenting everything. He said, Frank, I never saw anything like what they're reporting on the news.
Period.
So,
well, I was going to say the one thing about the Terry Fox defacing the monument.
Yeah.
It had the defacing consisted, as far as I understand, they put a Canadian flag in his hand and upside a banner that said "freedom" on his chest.
Or freedom. Okay.
Yeah, no, it was a flag in the hand and a freedom thing on his chest.
Freedom thing on his chest. But then hours later, flowers.
Yep.
They didn't talk about that.
No.
But then it was all over social media.
And I'll tell you another thing about the war monument. Not only were the veterans around there shoveling the snow,
or
taking care of it,
yeah.
There was 24-hour surveillance from a video camera from the vans that were parked in front of the monuments. So. Lies, lies, lies. But you would expect nothing else from CBC Radio Canada that are paid $1 billion plus a year from the government, from CTV News, Global, that are bailed out to the in the order of $600 million. He's bought the press. The press knows what they have to do to keep those subsidies going. The press knows what they have to do to continue to get these COVID ads, which is another form of laundering of taxpayer dollars for buying the media. They know what they have to do, and it's a game, and they do it very well. They love them or hate them, and I hate them. They do it well. They do it mercilessly.
How long do you think legacy media lasts? Because I have a window of another, I always say another 5 to 7 years or less. Could even last longer. But I think, if anything, legacy media has been exposed more than ever during COVID and now during this Freedom Convoy here in Canada. It's really going down the same road as it has in the United States in the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, the problem is they can last for as long as the government will, fork over our hard-earned tax dollars to buy them off. But
the audience is dwindling.
The audience is dwindling, except they're going to.
People are starting to figure it out
for sure. Except it's not a coincidence either that Trudeau comes in. I forget the number. I think it's Bill C-10, the one that wants to govern the interwebs.
That's exactly it.
Under the Broadcast Act.
Very scared about that.
Yeah, it's the way to say, hey, where they're losing it. They're not losing viewership on TV. Just nobody's watching TV. They're all on the internet, and so. You get onto the internet and nobody's watching CTV except to give it a thumbs down. What do you do there? Disable the thumbs down button on YouTube. Fine. That doesn't mean it's not going to get ratioed on comments. But nobody's watching it. What do you do now? Well, now just let's amend the Broadcast Act or the Broadcasting Act. It's the Broadcast Act.
Broadcasting.
And basically say, if you're big enough on YouTube, you're a broadcaster subject to the terms of the Broadcast Act, so we can regulate you and fine you. And that's just
like the
way,
CRTC with radio or TV.
Absolutely. And that's the way to equalize the playing field by no longer making it merit-based, but just having the government interfere for their benefit of their crony media. And that's what they're trying to do with Bill C-10, which is why I'm glad it was. It never passed.
No.
But you get Erin O'Toole coming out and saying, we will revoke or retract Bill C-10 if we're elected to power. And I said, that's great messaging, Erin. It hasn't passed yet. How about you just fight it passing as opposed to saying what you're going to do when it passes once you get into power? And then I don't know if that reached him, but the next day he actually changed his message and said, we will oppose this. But then, government says they'll do something until they benefit from the power that they're, opposed to today because their adversary is wielding it. But who knows what a government does when they get that power? But that's it. It's just, but I do see the media, it's in decline in viewership, and I don't know if they can ever salvage their credibility. The one thing I did see, not more than I would have liked, but I saw enough of it. The people are fed up with the media. They're there. They're heckling them. They're booing them. They're yelling at them. I don't like it because it tends to spiral, and you get more people doing it. And then
I agree.
And then you get one dude who thinks he's got his crowd permission slip to do something stupid to the media, and also they clip it. There was one guy heckling CNN, and I'm not
saw
saying,
that.
Stop. This is all. And sure enough, when CNN ran their bit, that guy was in there making the crowd look like a bunch of idiots.
And that's what I'm concerned about, because I get a lot of messages via my DMs, and people will send me the links to people assaulting journalists and all that. Like, I'm making it very clear, as somebody who's worked in media for 30 years, I'm against that, of course. Freedom of speech, no matter who's saying it, is important, coming from whoever's mouth. In this case, these reporters that are in Ottawa, even though they're on the side of legacy media and they're not showing all the facts, I think it's very important for them to broadcast and be able to broadcast without a snowball hitting them in the back of the head or somebody throwing them on the floor, whatever the case is. And I'm like you see that right away, and you immediately think, you facepalm and go, this is going to be on the 6 o'clock news. And this doesn't help our cause.
This is when I have my own, not delusional thoughts, where I say, like, is that guy a plant in there to do that, to make the rest of us?
That's the first thing I think.
Like, dude, and as you say, stop it.
Right.
And I say, there's the old expression, like, you cut out someone's tongue, you're not proving them a liar, you're just proving that you don't want to hear what they have to say. Mm-hmm. Same thing with let them do their thing. Mm-hmm. First of all, no violence, period, ever, categorically. No one's ever going to find anything different on my channel. But I even say, like, verbal abuse, sometimes it's funny, sometimes you understand why they're doing it, but also it's just bad because it will reflect poorly. Knowing that they're liars, knowing that they're disingenuous, knowing that they're out there to demonize everybody with one brushstroke. You get one idiot who goes too far, that idiot will define the entire crowd of people who are women, children, of all walks of life, and it makes everybody look bad. So if you genuinely care about the cause, you don't do it. Let them do their business, respond to them in kind, and if you're you take my approach, interview them. They can't think on their feet, which is a beautiful thing, because when you spend so much time having to, like, carefully craft a narrative, pick and choose, you can't think on your feet quickly. And so I see one of the CBC guys, and other than the fact that they will never talk to me, period. He answered a few questions, just couldn't answer. Like, hey, do you guys think you have a bit of a slant? And he's like, no, I don't think we have any slant. It's like, so, I mean, when you select to report on this and that, you don't think that that's, a bias. No, I think we do, and they lack self-reflection, but they lack the ability to think on their feet. So there's better ways to approach them than heckling them, which just makes you look like the Yahoo at a baseball game, behind the camera trying to get your 30 seconds of attention. But they were not having a fun time there, but I did even ask them. They said, by and large, heckled. Yeah, one person said they had a beer can thrown. One person said their colleague had a beer can thrown at his head. I suspect it was empty, and I'm not saying that to be funny, but that's
well, in Canada, it's always empty. Well, no one's throwing a full can of beer.
Exactly. That's so. But no, their credibility is irreparably harmed, and rightfully so. How much longer they can survive? They're not surviving off their own merit, and they're not surviving off their own quality. So they can survive as long as the government keeps feeding them.
And so much has changed over the decades of our lifetime as well. With TV shows like 60 Minutes, W5.
Well, let's get to W5.
That were all, back in the day, had credible journalists, showed both sides of the stories, did some really great reporting. Now you tune in to these TV shows, these news shows, and I'm constantly shaking my head where I can't watch. And I didn't get a chance to see. You were on W5 over the weekend. What happened with that whole thing? Because I noticed your tweet that you put out. I don't know the exact story, but you were down in Ottawa just the other day doing some
journalism,
independent journalism.
I call it documentary. I'm a documentarian. I'm not a journalist.
No,
because I don't. But then again, I don't know what a journalist is anymore. I just said, if journalist means being there and being honest, I guess I'm a journalist.
Yes.
But I was just documenting and learning for myself. But no, this interview, I did the interview with W5. I might be close to a month ago, if not over a month ago, and I didn't realize that this is Kevin Newman.
Yeah.
Who is doing this piece on Rumble. Rumble, for anybody who doesn't know, is now
alternative to
I'd say it's
YouTube.
Arguably the biggest competitor to YouTube. It's a video hosting platform. It has seen an exodus from YouTube with all the censorship. And it's a Canadian-based company. I didn't know that this was going to be intended to be a hit piece on Rumble, and I didn't appreciate. I'm a naive person, but not too naive, but sometimes optimistically naive. I didn't realize that I was just going to be the vehicle through which they were going to try to defame or besmirch, Rumble negatively. So Kevin Newman, it was a good interview.
He interviewed you?
Yeah, he came to my house. They had a whole rig. They had you realize like how antiquated everything is in their cost. He had him, I think it was one or two producers. They come in with big cameras, a dolly on a rig. I mean, it took an hour to set up. Whereas what we've seen is all you need is a camera and a little bit of integrity, and you go into a crowd in Ottawa, and you'll get 500,000 people will watch a video in a day. But no, we did the interview, and at one point I appreciated that this was going to be something of a hit piece, where he had asked me, do I not feel responsible for the negative comments or the comments that could induce violence on my videos? It's like, there's 5,000 comments on any one video, and it's the internet. If that's the criteria, go look at anybody else. Go look at the Young Turks videos. They didn't air this part of the interview, but so there was some selective editing, yada yada. There's
always selective editing,
and they put the scary music in the background when they start looking at some of my work. But their bottom line
it's like
angle
the theme
is that,
from Jaws.
No, it's literally like I don't even know where they get this crappy music from. But their bottom line was Rumble is an alt-right or far-right platform for misinformation on COVID, and to support that statement, Kevin Newman, in the final piece, which I didn't see before it aired, said Viva Frei, who's had videos, plural, pulled from YouTube and has been challenged by Facebook, nonetheless posts on Rumble. To suggest that, first of all, that the first part of that statement is true, that I've had any videos pulled from YouTube or challenged on Facebook, and that my solution to that is to go to the Wild West of anti-censorship and post misinformation there. And so then I'm like messaging someone live while watching this. It's like, well, there's a lie. I've had exactly one video pulled from YouTube, and it was reinstated to YouTube. It was my breakdown of the Alex Jones deposition. And the history with that video is amazing. That was my eye-opening experience into the weaponizing of ambiguous user terms of service. Mm-hmm. I did that video. Alex Jones's deposition was a 3.5-hour deposition in Texas in one of the Sandy Hook harassment cases, mm-hmm. and defamation cases, sorry. And the media was just running with one headline, which was, I suffer from a little psychosis back then. And I was like, oh, that's a great 5 seconds. It's a 3.5-hour deposition. I want to watch it. I watched the whole thing. It was a garbage deposition. The lawyer who did it, I won't say should be disbarred, but terrible deposition. Did not go well at all. Mm-hmm. But based on the media reports, you would have thought it was Alex Jones embarrassing himself for 3 hours. So I do the breakdown. The video starts catching serious traction, like over 100,000 views. Then it gets demonetized, and then it gets pulled from YouTube. And someone calls me and says, where'd your video go? I don't see it anymore. I go and it says, removed because it violated the terms of service as relates to hate speech. So a video of me on my balcony breaking down a deposition, and there was nothing in it that it was hate speech. I appeal. They say, no, your appeal's dismissed within short order. I don't even know who reviewed it. But then 2 weeks later, the video is not just back on YouTube, unbeknownst to me, but remonetized. So it's got like double blessing from YouTube. So then I tweet out, I said, Kevin Newman, CTV W5, if you're going to mention that I had a video pulled from YouTube, you might want to mention that it was reinstated on YouTube so that, people are not left thinking I was sanctioned for whatever the reason. And also, I don't think I've ever had a video or anything challenged on Facebook. I've never had any issue with Facebook in the first place. So we'll see if they retract and correct, which I suspect they should. Because I messaged, I said, that could give people the wrong impression of the quality of my work. But that was the extent of it. They want to spin it for whatever the reason. They want to go after Rumble because Rumble is a challenge to legacy media. Rumble mm-hmm. is where people are going, not just for video hosting cute cat videos, for hours and hours of live stream news, information, entertainment. People are on Rumble. It's not yet at YouTube's numbers by any means, but when I was streaming, I was at 30,000 live viewers on YouTube. At one point, I was at near 20,000 live viewers on Rumble, and it's insane. If you're W5 and CTV,
those are better numbers than them.
You're jealous and you're angry. And so what do you do when you're jealous and you're angry? You lash out and you try to malign the people who are succeeding on their own merits. So that was the purpose of it. It was just interesting. That's my first hit piece. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be once I realized that it was going to be edited into that. And that's because I think it's very difficult to even take anything I say out of context because I tend to weigh my words very, very thoroughly before they come out of my mouth.
Yeah, you are very like
neurotic.
Look,
it's neurotic.
Well, look, we're all a little neurotic, but you have a talent. Not everyone thinks they can do what you do. It takes a certain type of person, and you have the background, you have the knowledge. You're a lawyer. You put it together with your knowledge of social media because you've grown, like you said, from that squirrel, bringing your GoPro camera up the tree to what you made it, what you turned it into. Not everyone could do that. So I applaud you for doing what you did.
Well, thank you. You made me almost inhale my water when you compliment me.
No one compliments me.
It's definitely been a transition. The ability, I think, the neuroses is a curse and a blessing because I do before it comes out of my mouth, it tends to circulate in my head quickly, so that I make sure not to say something stupid or inconsiderate or that can be spun by someone who wants to spin it. The flip side is I'll freak out and obsess over having said something that no one else will have noticed, and then. Yeah, whatever. But I don't. But thank you. And it's been one heck of a transition because it was mostly the unwillingness to express my own opinion because I don't like hurting people. Like genuinely, I don't like upsetting people, even if they deserve it. And it was the biggest problem I had as a practicing lawyer. So I remember one day I did a deposition, an examination, an interrogation, and I made the person cry, and it was great. Client's happy. It was a great deposition. And then I felt terrible that night. Like I said, I devastated another human, and that's necessary to be good at what I do. Like you have to crush, because the law, unfortunately, is not about reaching amicable solutions, middle grounds. Or if it is, it's about reaching that amicable middle ground after you've crushed them into the point where now they say, yeah, I should compromise. And it never made me feel good. And so at first, breaking down it was a transgender issue. And I said, I know what I think, but I know there's trans people out there who will get offended if you say biological males should not be competing in biological female sports. I know they're going to get offended. And even if I believe it, I don't want to offend anybody, even if I think I believe in what I'm saying and it's not insensitive and whatever.
You have compassion.
But then at some point you also have to get realistic because when you start seeing the way the world is going and you see what's going on in sports, and then you see all right, I believe in trans rights. I believe in women's rights. And so when trans rights trump women's rights, well, then you have to, there's a problem.
Call it out.
You have to call it, and you have to find the solution. Like, what is the solution? Because to say that if you say that I'm pro-trans rights to the point where I'll say that biological men should be able to compete in women's sports, you are arguably trampling on women's rights. And there's been 50, 75, 100 years of women's rights that women fought hard for. And now you're basically saying, too bad, so sad. I have another right that I think is more valuable than your rights. And the question is not failing to respect anybody's rights, but finding the logical middle ground. Where is distinction justified and where is distinction discrimination? But very new. That's another new. But so all that to say, I've gotten less shy about sharing my opinion, but I still weigh my opinion when I share it, unless I'm talking about the psychopathic fascist dictator Justin Trudeau. I've lost it.
Speaking of the psychopathic fascist dictator, there's a lot of names you could call this guy, a lot of great adjectives you can use. Yesterday you tweeted, or maybe, no, I think it was this morning, the catastrophe of Canada has a name. It's Justin Trudeau. He's just when you think he can't outdo himself from the last ridiculous thing he said or deranged thing he did, he does another. He just keeps, people criticize Trump for doing that, right? Like Trump would, just when you thought he couldn't say something worse, then he's like, I could kill somebody on Fifth Avenue and probably get away with it. At a different level, Justin Trudeau saying the same type of stuff, right? And is it derangement? Is he deranged? Has he lost his mind?
I think he is a. I'm always reluctant to do the animal analogies because I don't want anyone saying like I'm equating people to minimizing them or comparing them to rodents. I'll say he's a wounded animal. Pick your animal. He's a wounded animal, and the wounded animal will lash out and bite, especially when cornered. Mm-hmm. And right now he's a cornered, wounded animal. But then the flip side is when he's reigning just through public support, he thinks he can do whatever he wants. Now he's crap. You come out and call people small fringe minority, and that pisses people off. And so what do? Don't apologize because that's what a normal person with a conscience would do. Double down. What do you do when you double down? Well, you can distract through more crises. But actually, before I forget, while I was live in Ottawa, I noticed an individual following me for a bit. Friendly follow. Wanted the camera to be off before talking. Individual came from China. And he said, look, I was in China in Tiananmen Square, an older guy. And when Trudeau said small fringe minority to describe the truckers, that he says that is exactly what whoever the Chinese leader was at the time said in Mandarin. I think he said small. He gave me the word in Mandarin. Small fringe minority was the translation. So I do genuinely think that he used that specific term on purpose. But setting that parenthesis aside,
he loves
China. No, and it's the same playbook. But the guy said, like, when I heard him say that, I was like, holy crap, that is exactly what they said about the Tiananmen Square protesters back and then. But no, he's a wounded animal, and he's lashing out, and he will do anything to preserve himself. And
this is his last ditch effort now with the Emergencies Act, which we'll get into.
I was going to say, like, declaring the Emergencies Act, and now he's effectively said. Latest thing today was they're going to keep the Emergencies Act in force to prevent future blockades, just in cases anymore. And now I said, like, holy crap, people don't like the historical comparisons to Nazi Germany. As if Nazi Germany only started in 1939, but like you could compare it to different parts of Nazi Germany. Reichstag Fire, 1933, for example, where there was a staged incident that Hitler exploited to abuse the Emergencies Act to basically declare himself leader and suspend Parliament. Sounds oddly familiar, except in this case we didn't actually have a Reichstag Fire. We just had the media saying there might be one, but. He declares the Emergencies Act, which is intended to respond to a national emergency when the provinces lack the resources to address it. Now that it's all over, he's basically saying, I want to keep this in effect to prevent future. So it's gone from being reactive to prospective, which is ringing a lot like 1933, not 1939 Hitler, just 1933 Hitler.
And people hate when people like yourself make those comparisons. But you're Jewish. Right,
but here's the thing: I do not say I'm allowed doing it because I'm Jewish.
No,
I said they are always dangerous analogies.
Yes,
and when people do them reflexively or thoughtlessly, it's one thing. When you're actually charting out political progression about invoking, exploiting fabricated emergencies in order to justify literally suspending Parliament, because he even suspended the debate on Friday of the emergency declaration because of the emergency. At some point, the comparisons become apropos, they become fair, and I'm sorry, when you start discussing excluding people from grocery stores and life essential services based on unvaccination status, I think it's fair game to start making the comparisons.
Yeah.
But so I say, Trudeau, the Catastrophe of Canada was trending on Twitter, and so I go to
this morning.
This morning,
okay,
it was like, oh no, sorry, police brutality was trending in Canada, and the featured article on the Twitter when you go to search said the Catastrophe of Canada, and I screenshot, circled, and I said, yeah, the Catastrophe of Canada has a name, and it's Justin Trudeau. It's a goddamn catastrophe. He's done things which, even if this is shut down tonight, and even if he's outed from office, he's done lasting damage to the very fabric of society, where now good, honest, salt of the earth people are literally worried that when they go to fill up their car with gas now, their card's going to be frozen because they gave $50 to the Freedom Convoy, a registered not-for-profit.
It's insanity.
And it's damage that will take years to recover from. But he has turned Canada into a national disgrace and an international laughingstock. And so, it's a catastrophe. Even if it ends tonight, or even if he's outed and it's the end of his political career, and I hope to goodness that it is, he's done, I won't say irreparable harm, but he's done extremely long-lasting harm to the very fabric of Canadian society.
We're about to vote on this later on this evening. At the time of this recording of this podcast, it's Monday, February 21st. It's just after 3 o'clock here. So we have about 3 hours before this goes down.
Yep.
So
we'll see something. If Jagmeet Singh has announced whether or not he's going to vote. I won't even give myself that. He was supposed to announce, Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, whether or not he was going to vote on this at 12:30. So if he doesn't vote, I guess it's good, because it means the Conservative vote will proportionally carry more weight. But if he
what do you think is going to happen? We could have fun with it, because we'll know the answer in a few hours, and this will air a couple of days after the fact.
Do I want to look smart, or do I want to play it safe? It's going to get struck down. Trudeau is going to be,
I hope,
he's going to be like that last, I've used this analogy before, but he'll be that last minnow of the bait ball swimming around in the ocean of politics, and a political shark is going to come and swallow him. Because if the Liberals don't understand that Justin Trudeau is a liability for the party, and that it is now their opportunity
to take, if
they don't understand that,
no,
they're idiots. And Trudeau is despised by everybody. I don't know of anybody who loves Trudeau except even the media, but they don't love him. And when it becomes convenient politically to turn on him, they all will. It just takes
especially his party.
Yeah,
and it's coming down to that. So,
because I mean, look, I did the debates. Mark Garneau was sitting next to me in Westmount. What's that place called? Victoria Hall. Mm-hmm. It's clear. Garneau's hatred for Trudeau is palpable. When he said no comment to one of the questions as to what do you say about your awful Trudeau leader being a hypocrite, liar, whatever, and he says no comment, it's palpable. And Trudeau he's a stain on Canada, but he's above all else a stain on the Liberal Party.
I agree.
And so the political disdain is there and the political opportunity is there. And if any of them had the slightest political aspirations, now's the chance. Vote this down, blame it all on Trudeau, and start clean, whenever, hold a vote of no confidence, get him out, start anew. So I'm predicting it's going to go down. I'm predicting he's going to go down politically. No violence and no nothing, full stop, because all that Justin Trudeau wanted from this protest was actual violence. That's all he wanted. And he brought in the police to try to provoke it. And then when they couldn't even provoke violence from this crowd, they just fabricated it. But that's why I say all that he wanted, it would have been the manna from the heavens had there been actual violence here. So full stop, none of that. My prediction, it's going to go down. He will have effectively rendered that the exceptional use of that Emergencies Act meaningless. Then he's going to go down, and then maybe we can start healing again.
I've been telling this to anyone who would listen the last couple of weeks, and there's a lot of my close friends, some who are liberals, like that's a bad thing, but some who are liberals have said, I'm dreaming, Technicolor, and that he's going to last another 2 years, and his government's going to last another 2 years. And I said, if the liberals know what's good for them, exactly what you just said right now, this is their opportunity to reset. That's another word I don't like. Mandates and reset. But this is their opportunity to do it.
Great resets.
What happens? Okay, I love what you just said. What happens if the opposite?
It's the end of. I'm not being hyperbolic. It's the end of Canada, and you're going to see absolute. You will see panic. You'll see people running on the banks because they don't know. Hey, you don't know what's criminal anymore. It used to be that it's in the charter for whatever the Charter of Rights is worth. What is it? 11G. It's 11G. You can't be found guilty of an act or omission which was not a criminal act or omission at the time. And people don't understand this. If I were in court and I'd be making an argument, I would be saying that this is entrapment by the government because they authorized this Freedom Convoy as a not-for-profit. It's a registered not-for-profit. Whether or not it can issue tax receipts, I don't know if there's a distinction in law, but who cares? It's a registered not-for-profit. People donated to it. Not to finance first of all, it's not even a designated, it's not a terrorist. There's been no court order sanctioning this convoy for doing anything yet. Yeah. If and when, okay, fine. People make donations afterwards, fine. They've now frozen, I think Chrystia Freeland, as of this morning, confirmed that they have frozen 206 accounts in respect of the organizers of the what is it, the word? The founders, the administration, and the truck drivers who parked their cars on Wellington. You may not like them. You may think what you think about it, but to talk about the extrajudicial freezing of accounts, freezing of assets, no due process, and immunizing the banks or proposing immunizing the banks for such conduct, go to North Korea. People like to dump on North Korea for putting Otto Warmbier in jail for 13 years hard labor. You remember the guy who allegedly stole some memorabilia from one of the hotels? You want to dump on North Korea? They had a trial for him. Mm-hmm. It was a 1-hour trial. They had their trial, and he was sentenced to 13 years hard labor. Why is extrajudicial, in the absence of a court order, having immunized the banks? You're not even having the show trial that North Korea had, so you're even one step worse. And people are like, well, I don't like the truckers, so I accept this now. Teachers union, good luck next time they say you block traffic for a little too long. Freezing of your bank accounts. Good luck, workers union.
It just sets the wrong precedent.
It sets an undemocratic, and I'm going to say an inhumane precedent. You want to starve? What good does it do freezing their accounts? I mean, it's purely punitive. It's purely malicious, and it's absolutely useless. If you think they've caused damage, seize it. First of all, charge them with something, have them post bond, and maybe get a court order to say you have to put up some money just in case we actually succeed. Because if we don't succeed, we've screwed up your life. You can't pay rent. You can't pay your mortgage. You can't pay for food. I know one of the organizers. His bank account is frozen. Can't buy medicine. Can't buy food. Can't buy groceries. Can't buy gas. I mean, he's got a good community, but this is inhumane torture. and in the absence of any court orders, and then go so far as to say, if this passes tonight, the banks will be immunized from their actions. I would float, well, it'll be too late when this airs. If it doesn't pass, the banks had better have thought long and hard, because if this does not pass, as a litigator, I would argue that anything they did up until now was in fact not immunized. So whatever damages they cause these people, I think there'll be some lawyers ready to take that case, because they have not formally been immunized from the actions that they're currently taking. And if this gets struck down saying, well, Trudeau said we'd be immunized, well, too bad. And you've actually done something in the absence of legal immunity. In my humble opinion, I might be wrong, but I would seriously explore that. People need to be politically punished for what they've done. And if they not only do not get punished, but this gets ratified and this becomes, our parliament says this was okay, Canada's done.
The end of Canada as we know it.
As we know it, we'll call it something else. I don't want to call it China. I know people have that meme. They call it Kanakistan or. The memes are funny. I don't make them myself, but it will be the end of. It'll be the end of any form of a free country. I mean, where the government can extrajudicially, with immunity, tell the bank, we don't even have to unperson this person on social media, starve them to death. Literally. I mean,
that's what they're doing.
Literally. I mean, no one. It hasn't happened yet. It's not hyperbolic. You can go to a food shelter and get food for free. Anybody who supports this, if they think they're a liberal, they might want to take a long, hard look in the mirror.
Well, that's the thing that's shocking to me, Viva. When I see liberal MPs around the Montreal area, because this is where we live, some of their tweets, some of their messages, some have gone against. There's 3 now, right?
There's publicly.
Publicly.
My understanding is there's a good 30
a lot more
privately.
So that's what you heard as well. I heard there's about 2 or 3 dozen.
And I'm not a journalist. I've heard this from good, trustworthy sources who are inside. So
So I mean, this is it. We're in the last few hours here. And it's too bad this wasn't happening as we were speaking and we had it on. But
but I'm going to be watching whenever this airs tonight. I will be watching with butterflies in my stomach. I mean, it's crazy. But I also then you actually have to plan for a world in which wrongthink and wrong. I mean, because people have to appreciate donating to a charity or donating to a fundraiser. If the government can then come in and say, you donated to this fundraiser, we have now retroactively criminalized it. They're criminalizing wrongthink. That's exactly what they're doing. And so you fundraise for someone who's raising for a defense. Oh, that he was accused of a very bad crime. If you donated to his defense, you're done. Frozen bank account. It's anybody who thinks this is a good idea. I don't want to call them an idiot, but I can't think of another word. Grossly naive. Or just maybe they're fascists as well. Maybe they think maybe they want this power themselves one day. This is power that no one should have.
Do you think our prime minister has spiraled so much in the last couple of years because with everything that he has done and all the wrongs, he's committed a lot of wrongs that we've discussed during this podcast. Do you think this was his, as I said, his last chance, almost his last hurrah? This is it. I'm going to stand up and say we're invoking this Emergencies Act. I'm the leader. This is my last chance to tell them we don't negotiate with terrorists, which is ridiculous because they're not. And now this is the hill. This is he dies on.
He's backed himself into a corner. He's dug a hole. I mean, he has. This is what you refer to as politically painting himself into a corner. He's just been doing. You're right. One thing after another. Can't apologize. Can't admit it was wrong because that's what narcissists do. And there's been so many. I mean, it's been one thing after another where he just wants all the power. And I'm just trying to think of legislatively, behavior-wise, running the election on
during COVID,
during COVID on nothing shy of division, backtracking. Once you have said publicly, we're not a country that makes vaccination mandatory. And then your political ad is, I believe vaccination should be mandatory for air travel and bus. I mean, you're a proven remorseless liar. Yeah. What do? You have to just keep pushing the envelope to retain the power. Because the second you lose the power, you know what you would do to your ideological adversary who lost the power. And he's totally fearful of that. So he's just got to keep pushing it. And this is the one last power grab. Can you imagine? And before they could even debate implementing the measures, bringing in police, that would make North Korea, China, and Iran jealous. I mean, so much so, I don't even remember if I mentioned it here, but you had the president of China and I'm going to screw up his name, the president of Iran, tweeting out, "Thanks, Trudeau. You can never lecture us again."
Yeah, and the same thing with the president of El Salvador. So, when these are. When they're
poking fun at you, the only problem is they love it too, because now they get to do whatever they want in Hong Kong. They get to do whatever they want in. Just before he even votes on these measures, he's implementing them in the most brutal manner possible. Beating up a vet, cuffing a vet for 2 hours, an Afghan vet whose body was torn apart in an IED. Trampling the woman they trampled with the horse is I don't know if she's 80, but she's close, indigenous woman at the protesting.
Yeah. And she's okay now, but
there was a rumor that she had died, thank goodness she hadn't. But like her, you see these videos of these cops. First of all, I don't know where they're from. You don't know who they are. A lot of them don't have names, just numbers.
They have covers on their...
Or they have covers like that cop who accosted the woman in downtown Ottawa yesterday.
Wouldn't let her go get a coffee.
Wouldn't let her get a coffee, grabs her camera. Like, this is... But he comes in with a full show of force that would make tyrants jealous in Canada.
Everybody's watching, Viva.
Everybody's watching. But by the way, but for the fact that people were there streaming, not that many people would have been watching. And you understand why tyrants want to get the media out. And actually, or
on their side.
Yeah, they don't want the media out. CBC had backdoor access. I mean, but even CBC, and I think it was one of the clips. The reporter's name was Rosemary, and I think it was Rosemary Barton. But I don't want to call her out because I don't know from the clip. They're live streaming. As a cop, you see him kneeing like multiple times whoever they're arresting, and they're saying, well, we're seeing footage of someone getting arrested now. It's like, no, you're not. You're seeing footage of a police savagely beating an unarmed protester, like softening them up for turkey dinner, like it's it's a bag of meat that you got to soften up with your knee. So yeah, they want to control the media that's in there, but even when they do that, occasionally the truth gets out. But we were lucky this time around to have 3 weeks of the truth, and then the last 2 days of an awful truth, which is an absolute undemocratic tyrant in office who wants to criminalize all constitutional rights, weaponize it for political purposes, and effectively, this is the best way that he could try to stifle PPC growth. Punish the supporters, because we probably know who donated to the convoy proportionately. I would argue it's PPC.
And you know what? They are selling T-shirts just down the street and making free food for everybody.
There's no. I mean, I saw a lot of PPC hats there. I didn't see so many conservatives. So
I don't see anything wrong with that, because they're a party for the people, and
I don't
see anyone else.
I don't see any. There's no problem in my mind even donating to this convoy. I publicly tweeted it before the leak.
When does the PPC become like the trucker convoy, and then a terrorist party where they get immediately,
Oh yeah, how about if I don't know if Maxime Bernier donated, but hey, criminalize it. Yeah, and then he can't run.
And then his party's done.
Pierre Poilievre was out there seen supporting them. Criminalize it. Yeah. I mean, it's great. And if you don't draw an analogy between this and Reichstag Emergencies Act 1933, you don't understand history.
Well, I'm glad you said it, because like you said, you should never have to say, well, I'm this nationality so I could say it. I'm Italian so I could make it.
And I never do.
I have a tendency sometimes to do that. We all do as humans, and I think it's not right.
For sure.
You should be able to speak freely and say, no, this is what happened. If you follow the history and you read up on it and you know your history, it's pretty clear.
I said it before, like when people preface things by saying as a blank, unless you're referring to professional experience, the as a is irrelevant. It's not because you're a woman. As a woman, your opinion, that does not qualify, enhance, or minimize your opinion. As a Jew, I am no more entitled to historical understandings of the Holocaust than a non-Jew.
But I always like it, though, as I have many Jewish friends, when they come out and say this, I like it. I'm cheering in the background and saying, oh, that's good, because it's a very sensitive issue. So when you bring it up, and somebody who's Jewish does bring it up, it does... You know what I'm saying? It does make
absolutely, and I still get flack from
from
other Jews who say,
of course, 100%.
"Don't do that minimize." So first of all, it doesn't minimize anything.
No.
And if you think that there's nothing to learn from that incident, so that you can apply it to future context, well, then you've learned the wrong lesson.
Correct.
He's like, okay, it was not the sad reality. It was not an anomaly of humanity. It was just a very bad manifestation of one event. this hatred is hatred. It's existed forever. And if you're going to say we have nothing to learn from the Holocaust, so don't analogize any future event to that event, you've learned the wrong lessons.
Well, that's like with Black History. I had my last guest who was on here. We were talking about Black History Month, and it's the same thing with slavery, right? If you can't mention the history that got us here, there's a history. There's a whole history, world history. There's reasons why. The United States was built on revolution. It was built on civil war. It was built on slavery. That's where it came from. So if you can't go back to those instances in history and draw the same comparisons, because this is where we're headed. There's a whole group of people that just want to erase history, and they have by cancel culture, getting rid of statues, getting rid. The history was so horrific, we don't want to look at it anymore, right? Let's just live in the moment. Sure, we live in the moment, but there's a reason why we're here, and we need to understand how we got here and how we get past this and into the future.
And not just that, historically, the people who tore down statues and erased history never did it for good reasons.
No, exactly.
So let's even learn from the history of the people who want to deny and rewrite or ignore history. But no, when Gina Carano came out a while back and put out an Instagram post, and it was a picture of a woman running down the street in 1930s Germany, and then her post basically said an era where the government turned neighbors on neighbors, where they felt empowered to assault and harass and yada yada, and then she got a bunch of flack, and I put out a video basically saying it's always dangerous to make not hyperbolic, but sensitive analogies. It's when you draw comparisons to World War II, it's always sensitive. You're always going to allow people to misinterpret it. But I'm at the point now where we've seen enough of enough similarities leading up to it. People, you make an analogy, they think you're talking about the Holocaust, but there are there's analogies to what led up to 1939.
Exactly.
And you can't, if you ignore the 8 years that led up to it, the Holocaust was not only defined by 1939 to 1945, it's defined from 1929 or 1930 to 1939. And if you want to ignore it, that's fine. If you want to pretend that you can never make the analogies, that's fine. But when you start talking about, I hit my limit when they said in New Brunswick, to get into a grocery store, you have to be vaccinated. And the government put out an email saying, in order to procure life essential services, we'll find alternatives. I was like, yeah, okay, we're getting very close now to fair enough analogies that I'm over the reluctance in this context. I won't resort to calling everyone Hitler if I disagree with them.
Of course.
It's the difference between Godwin's law and history. So,
how do we recover from this? Do we recover? I mean, the last 2 years of COVID has been challenging for everybody. Now, what we've seen in the last month with the trucker convoy, how the government has handled it, what they're going to be voting on later on tonight with the Emergencies Act. Come the fall, are we back in this again? Do you think they reinstate the mandates? Or so, if you were a politician, you were there, would you do like Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, and just make it illegal for these mandates to ever come back? You know what I'm saying?
100%. And the irony is that they call Ron DeSantis a fascist for outlawing mandates. I mean, this is where we're in Orwellian newspeak, where to prevent the government from mandating compelled behavior, that makes you the fascist. How do we heal from it? So I would have pulled a DeSantis from March, April, let's just say May of 2020. Like I said, it's, at some point, you don't lock down the healthy. Yeah. You don't lock down those who are not vulnerable. We have enough information to know now. You protect the vulnerable, and you let the ones who are even willing to take the risk, you let them live their lives. Yeah. And you let those who are not vulnerable maintain the infrastructure that you need.
Because they can't keep blaming our healthcare system has been compromised for decades.
Yep. No,
how long is it and they never solve it with every wave. There's no solution.
In 2018, they shut down elective surgeries in Toronto because they were overwhelmed from the flu season. But then they say, oh, well, we can't deal with it now. So you have to go home. Like we're stripping you of your constitutional rights because we as a government have been incompetent in maintaining the healthcare system. Learned the wrong lesson, people. So, but how do we heal from it?
Yeah.
Clean house politically, because it cannot be the same people who have been abusing you now saying it's time to come together. Doug Ford coming out and saying we just have to live with it now. It's like, sorry, sir, you're beyond that point. Yeah. I will listen to someone new say that. Yeah. Francois Legault saying, we don't like this divisive language in Quebec. I was like, you are the one who created a vaccine passport system, and now you're talking about division. Justin Trudeau saying, let's unify now. It's time to heal. sorry,
Too late.
Too late. You've been the abuser. You don't get to be the mediator now. So we need a clean house politically, and then people need to. You need someone who can actually talk sense and reassure a public, because reassuring is difficult. Getting people to be hysterical with fear is very easy. Fauci, oddly enough, is the master of instilling fear through what ostensibly looks like calm discourse, but it's language versus demeanor. You don't need to be a hysterical person can still induce calm, and a calm individual can still induce hysteria.
He's the master of that.
The master. Oh. Francois Legault is pretty close.
Pretty good.
Justin Trudeau, he doesn't instill fear. He's just disgusting. Doug Ford. So how's it? You need to clean house politically. You need people who are actual unifiers, who will foment open discourse and not demonize, and defund the CBC. Defund the CBC, Radio-Canada, and there should be no government involvement in subsidizing media. Survive on your own merit, because there's a reason why Steve Bannon succeeds on his own, Tim Pool, Rush Limbaugh back in the day. There's a reason why some succeed and others need to suck at the government teat, the government coffers to succeed. Cut them off, and if they can't succeed on their own, someone will buy up that airtime. But CJAD has not been succeeding on merit by any means, and they've been promoting the divisive rhetoric from the government. So clean house politically, defund the public media, because if they're public and they're independent, they have to stay that way, and you cannot report objectively on your employer, and that is effectively what we're asking them to do.
Stop watching and listening to media.
And it'll be nothing. There's good media out there. I'll say, like, well, I'm thinking of myself in particular.
I don't mean you. I mean, like, independent media journalists and
absolutely
that are there on the front lines reporting and giving a balanced story and opinion. Yes, but these companies under the umbrella of legacy media, radio stations, and they all answer to one person in a corporate office, whether it's Toronto, New York, one interest, and they adopt the same tactic. I mean, it's clickbait, it's fear mongering. There is that among the independent, but the bottom line is listen to a variety of sources. But the healing has to come from the top down, and it just needs people who have not been the ones doing the dividing now purporting. We've learned, the science has changed. Yeah. Let's all hold hands and say kumbaya. Sorry, sir, you just excluded me not me personally, physically, but me spiritually, because I didn't go to any stores. I had to wait. Luckily, the vaccine mandate is now no longer in effect in big box retail of 1,500 square meters or more. So I went to Bureau and Grow yesterday to get a hard drive. But didn't you feel, any part of you feel wrong doing that? Because
no, I didn't show passport. They no longer ask at the big box stores.
But I mean, doesn't it? Because for me, Viva, I know I'm going to have a hard time. Like I gave my Costco card back. I returned it the minute they implemented the vaccine passport. I looked at my wife. We're done. She agreed. We brought it back. We got a refund. I just can't see myself. I know maybe I'll get over it after a couple of years because I'll miss some of the stuff I buy there. But it bothers me. I just can't for the life of me walk into these places that close their doors.
That much I understand.
And I've never, by the way, ever mentioned whether I got vaccinated or not. That's no one's business, and it's no one's business whether you did. People that want to say it, they could feel free to say it, but my whole point is I was against the passport from the beginning, and I just can't see myself supporting these businesses again.
And that much, look,
maybe it's the wrong idea.
No, I understand that protest. My protest was not that bad. It's like while they were implementing it, I was never going to go back. Now, the whole irony is that everyone's like, okay, we'll just order it online. I was like, well, then I'm supporting what's his face,
Amazon,
Bezos and Amazon. Yeah. So there really is. Then go to the small mom and pop shop. They don't have a 5 terabyte hard drive at a small, at that Radio Shack anymore.
Yeah.
But that's look, I understand that. My protest was while it was in effect, and now just to show the absolute idiocy of the science. Hey, we're 1 month later. Yeah. How much did that app cost? How much did that entire vaccine application QR code cost the province? I'd like to know, and I'd like to know who got the contract. But yeah, and even when it comes to restaurants, I didn't eat in a restaurant that required it.
I didn't participate in any of that stuff. Never downloaded anything.
Oh no, I never downloaded the Vax app. At one point we had to register with ArriveCan for international travel.
Did. Yeah. We refused to do it.
I had one event that I nobody asked, nobody cares, but I am vaccinated. I didn't get vaccinated to travel.
Okay.
But I was invited somewhere. I was like, okay, well, until I can't, I will. I don't like it. I feel like an animal, but international travel is also a little bit different because what the U.S. requires me to show to come into their country, international travel is a privilege. Interprovincial travel is a right. And so the idea that I had to show proof to go to New Brunswick this summer, it hurt my stomach. But all that to say, science has changed. So the Vax Passport, and all it cost us and all it divided us, is now no longer in effect. But that guy now is going to talk to me about unifying. You didn't demonize me physically, but you demonized me spiritually, and you demonized people that I know physically. And I'm never going to forgive François Legault. And
that's the thing.
He will not be the one to unify me ever. I voted for him once. I voted for him in 2016 or 2018, whatever he ran.
2018.
I voted for him. He wasn't a fascist tyrant at the time. He wasn't sitting there pulling science out of his ass. I mean, he wasn't locking me in my home at 8 o'clock. The language stuff, I appreciate that Quebec is a French province and they want to preserve it. I don't agree with the laws all the time because I think sometimes they're counterproductive, but I understand it. But telling me I can't leave my house and masking up kids with potentially toxic face masks and forcing my kids to get vaccinated if they want to play sports at 13 years old, you can go straight to the political pits of hell for that.
I had a very short discussion with him before he became premier of the province at the Bell Center at a Habs game. And I remember coming home and telling my wife, I like him. There's something about him that I liked. I even told a couple of my friends, and they said, Frank, remember, he was part of the Parti Québécois. He's a separatist in disguise, wolf in sheep's clothing, blah, 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 blah. Was willing to give him a chance. I was looking back at some of the tweets I put out in the last couple of years. One of my last tweets, positive tweets, directed at François Legault, was how great a job he was doing early in the pandemic, which was March 2020, and then radio silence. I went dead right after that because it took that long. It was that quick, and things changed really quickly. One of the things that I liked about him in that short 2 or 3 minute conversation that I had with him was his disdain for Justin Trudeau. He hated him from day one, right? And I haven't liked Trudeau since the start. There was something about him that always, his smugness always rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm glad you said the things that you said, all justified and all backed up here during this podcast. But as I said, I was willing to give François Legault a shot. Now I'm done with it. And I'm done with all these people. Forever. But he will be voted back. You just don't
I'm not sure. I think there's, first of all, if I have to buy a billboard on the frickin' Décarie Expressway that says Supreme Leader Legault, never forget, I'll do it. I'm thinking about
I hope you do, but
it would be very worth. If I would never use GoFundMe, but if I start a crowdfund, will that be deemed to be a wrong thing? Will they have their bank accounts frozen? Financing? I can understand language laws in the province, and I don't mind them. I mind when the same people who support an independent Quebec call Israel an apartheid state, but that's a separate issue. And that's not for a blind support of Israel. It's only because it seems mutually incompatible to want to have an independent Quebec, but then criticize an independent Israel. Setting that aside, I never objected to those laws, in essence, to the extent that they don't go too far. Billboards twice, packaging in French and English, signs nettement prédominant. It doesn't bother me. I think it's stupid, and I didn't like Bill C-21, the face mask thing. I came out against it at the time, but he went overboard, and it really leads me to
so many lines.
It leads me to think as to whether or not he was doing this with respect to COVID, so that he could one day say, okay, you get all those rights back, but now you'll be much less inclined to complain about my exquisitely over-the-top language laws, which I'm going to push the envelope now because I've seen how far I can get. I got you to stay in your house from 8 in the night to 5, and you guys didn't say anything. I told you that you couldn't walk your dogs after COVID, and you didn't say. So I think
you accepted everything.
They're accepted like a bunch of goons, and the courts came and upheld him as well. Yeah. So. He's politically never again, and I'll do my best to make sure that people want me to run for the Conservatives in Quebec, but I think
you would look. I would love to see somebody like you, in politics, because we need people like you. We need genuine people who will make a difference. I'm afraid that
he gets reelected.
Sorry?
You're afraid that he's going to get reelected?
Well, not only will he get reelected, but let's say you happen to win and you head over to Ottawa or Quebec or the National Assembly, wherever you end up going as a member of Parliament or here in Quebec. You could scream. You could have a megaphone. Yep. Will anything ever change? Will it be futile once you get there? Will you be able to do the things you want to do? Probably not, right?
Because I would say definitely not.
Definitely not.
And then what?
So why bother?
I know. I mean,
but then again, the whole apathetic, why bother to me is like, well, then if people are not going to do it, then we're never going to have somebody change anything.
I've had a lot of people tell me that you start local up. You don't go federal down because you don't make the change from the top down. You make it from the bottom up.
Yeah.
But, you know, like Pierre Poilievre has been there screaming bloody murder for the last 2 years. His amazing examinations or interrogation of Justin Trudeau during the We charity, like when he was with Trudeau saying, how much did your family get paid? How much? And then Justin Trudeau goes into, well, we would gladly provide that information. And he goes, how much? I mean,
but he never answers questions.
He never answers. No. It was great sound bites. No. It went viral at the time. No. Nothing. I mean, we found out, but nothing. So Pierre Poilievre was screaming into the wind. It made for good sound bites at the time, but it didn't really change much long term. That's the concern. Like, nothing gets done in politics, but who knows? Then every now and again you have someone who does get things done and then gets absolutely destroyed by the media. You know, Trump got things done, got lambasted. JFK got things done, got assassinated. So,
right.
You know, the changers in politics sometimes meet bad fates. So I don't know, but it's going to take some. I know that I could unify because, in as much as people might hate my views on some issues, I will have a discussion with anybody about anything, even the counter protesters in Ottawa. And so long as they don't beat me up, I'll say whatever they want. I'll listen. And I mean, I know it's going to take something like that to unify people. I think I might be too far, and people might not ever. I
don't think you're too far anywhere.
Yeah, the people who no longer want to speak with me, I'm shocked and surprised because some of them are highly educated, among the most, I won't say privileged, but among the most fortunate people in the world who apparently I said things that are so insufferable and intolerable that they can no longer have discourse with me, which is discouraging. But
are they really listening to your words and what you're saying, or are they just hearing sound bites? Because everything could be taken out of context.
Oh no, I think it's beyond that. They think I was at the protest. They know that I'm
so they're just
done,
based on that.
Done.
Yeah, well,
I ran with PPC. Done.
Well, yeah, exactly. I know.
Don't think children should get vaccinated. Yeah. Done. With this vaccine, not with polio, not with
the history of vaccines.
not measles. With this one, not only I'm entitled to my own opinion.
Yeah,
I'm done to some people because they've done it. They've put their own kids at the risk, and now they resent anybody else who has not succumbed to the fear and the pressure. That's my personal belief, and I'm sure they judge me for it.
It's sad. It really is. And I always say the line translated from Italian to English. What have we become? What have we become as people that were? I've been personally, because we can only speak from experience, not allowed to go over to someone's house to enjoy something that everybody else is going to because I'm unwilling to disclose my vaccination status.
That makes me I've known so angry. I mean, my left eye started twitching. That enrages me. It's enraging.
It's lunacy, and I can't understand it coming from the people that people we don't see on the other side. That the trolls on social media, the people that write nasty shit. I couldn't care less about.
But these are reasonable people. These are
reasonable people who are intelligent, and you've had lifelong friendships with that are questioning your mental state. Basically, that we've lost our minds, but they're not willing to have a discussion past.
But I mean, we've lost our minds, but I've had experiences where people were asked to sit in different parts of the car, driving with the windows down.
Correct.
One person...
Which I refuse, by the way.
No.
Any type of stupidity that happens, and I say, guys, I'm out. And all due respect, I'll get there on my own. We'll see you there.
No. The person... If they see this, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But at one point in our family, they said, carpool. We're at an event. Like, let's can we go home with you? He's like, yeah. And the person says to someone else, and don't worry, my kids are vaccinated. He's like, well, don't worry, ours aren't. And the carpool never occurred after that. I mean, this is how deranged people have gotten, and smart otherwise. And it becomes a litmus test of moral purity. That if you don't do this, you're a small fringe minority with unacceptable views. And the reason why they feel that is because they heard it from the top down.
It's okay because somebody they voted for said it. That's the only reason. Yep. And I don't know who still looks. I don't know, and I said it the last podcast, I don't know who's going to vote for this guy. If he makes it to the next election. As I said, like you and what you predicted today on the podcast, I'm predicting...
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, I'm predicting the same thing. All right, I usually don't ask this towards the end of the podcast because I like things flowing like it has, and I don't like to say, hey, is there anything we forgot to talk about? But we've talked about so much, I am going to ask you, is there anything else you wanted to mention before we go upstairs and enjoy a charcuterie board or whatever my wife has prepared here.
Let me think.
Is there anything? Because we went through a lot of...
We went through a lot.
But I know there's a couple of things that we were going to touch upon maybe...
What happened? Because we had the protest. We
talked about Ottawa. We talked about the Emergencies Act. We talked about how much we love Justin Trudeau.
History of the channel.
We talked about COVID. We talked about the channel. We talked about your hair. We talked about your name.
I think we've covered it.
Squirrel.
Well, I would say the one that we didn't talk about, I caught a bass off a drone. If any of your viewers are listening, go to YouTube and put in drone bass fishing, and it's one of the happiest moments of my life. We'll watch it upstairs afterwards.
You know what? You have so many videos, and I've watched so many of them. I never saw that one.
Oh, this one's like 6 years old now.
Oh, okay. So you have to go back into the Viva archives.
Yeah, or if you just put in drone bass fishing, you'll get it. But no, I think what have we not touched on? But we've touched on everything, and I don't think I have anything that I forgot to mention. Except to see, like, this has been one hell of a fun ride in a very sad sense, what we've gone through over the last 2 years. But we'll see. I mean, it has to have a happy ending, because if it doesn't, people don't know what they've ushered in.
Thank you so much, Viva, for being on the drive-by. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and always being honest. And I love you, man. Thank you so much.
I'm incapable of lying. I'm incapable of lying because the worst thing I can think of is being thought of as a liar.
Me too. I feel the same way. Continued success, and I'm so happy, and I know I speak for a lot of people, so happy and thankful there are people like you in this world, or we'd be in big trouble. Because we're already in big trouble. We're hours away from possibly being in more deep trouble.
We'll see. Thank you
so
very
much,
Frank.
sir. We'll see you again here soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the Drive-By with Freeway Frank.
Watch all episodes of The Drive-By on YouTube. Listen in on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, Podbean, and tune in.